For over 15 years, Saturdays and Illegal Curve have been synonymous with one another. With insight, analysis, and interviews regarding the Winnipeg Jets, the Manitoba Moose, and all around the NHL, here are Dave Manouk, Ezra Ginsburg, and your host, Drew Mindell. The Illegal Curve Hockey Show, presented by Play Now, the official sports betting partner of the Winnipeg Jets, starts now.
Good morning, Winnipeg. Good morning, Manitoba. And for all those joining us live this morning on our YouTube channel and all of our social media platforms, we say good morning, universe, and welcome to the Illegal Curve Hockey Show. With Dave Manouk, with Ezra Ginsburg, I'm your host, Drew Mindell. Here for the next couple of hours, we're going to delve deep into the Winnipeg Jets, a version of whom play a hockey game later tonight in downtown Montreal. It's whatever the hell the new name of this tournament is. The Prospects tournament? What's it called, Dave? You'll know the name of it. It's not the Young Stars
Prospect
tournament.
Showdown.
The Prospect Showdown. There you go.
Prospect Showdown.
It's, yes, the Prospects. They're no longer going to be in British Columbia. Instead, they are in Montreal playing tonight at a sold-out Bell Center. That'll be fun for the kids against the Montreal Canadiens, a game that I know many of you have been asking, you can watch on the Jets YouTube channel itself. So that'll be happening a little bit later on tonight. So something to look forward to. If you've been desperate for a little bit of a taste of hockey, you can get it today from the Jets and the Montreal Canadiens young players. Anyways, gentlemen, good morning to you both and welcome back to the program. Another week of shows. Next week, of course, live on location at Winnipeg Jets Fan Fest. So we're looking forward to getting out of the studio and getting live and in person next Saturday morning at Jets Fan Fest. Good to see you guys.
Good morning, boys. Yeah, it seemed like it was a little bit quiet last week. And as you mentioned, Drew, it's going to ramp up very quickly. Prospects, obviously, guys, we're not going to be doing a post-game show after tonight's Prospects game, even though I think Dave M was pushing for it. But, you know, training camp's going to start next Thursday. We're going to be at Hockey for All Center a week from today, as Drew mentioned. So it's not going to be quiet for very long, that's for sure.
It will not be quiet for very long. Dave M is muted, so I'm not sure what's up with that, but that's okay. Dave M, good to see you on this
I'm
morning.
posting the show, Drew. I'm getting people knowing about the show. That's all I do.
Okay.
When Eddie's talking, I'm trying to get getting the show out there. That's all I do.
I thought you were going to say something there, but that's okay. We can delve right into this. Interesting comment. So it's the NHL media tour is going on in Vegas. It happened the last few days, and then they gather one player from each team, and they put them through the ringer of interviews and talking about the past season and the upcoming season. And Connor Hellebuyck, this one it got a little bit buried. It's in an interview with Dan Rosen of NHL.com, and I came upon it. I thought it was kind of interesting to hear the perspective from the Jets' number one goaltender, star goaltender, Connor Hellebuyck. We all know that there's always talk every offseason. The Jets have to lessen Connor Hellebuyck's workload. He plays too many games. He's got to play fewer games. They're going to try and get him, maybe it's going to be like 55 games this year. Maybe it's going to be 60 games. That's going to be it. They're going to have to lessen that workload. Otherwise, they're going to tire him out. Here's what Connor Hellebuyck had to say about that to Dan Rosen earlier this week. I thought it was interesting. Quote, yeah, the trend is the split, as in splitting the number of games. But I think that is a political movement in that someone got lucky and made it work, and now everyone else thinks, oh, that's the right way to do it. I don't agree with that. I think the best way to bring out the best part of yourself is to play and get into a rhythm. For me, I would like to go back to the days of 70-plus games. Connor Hellebuyck doesn't need no 60-plus. He needs 70-plus. I think you can stay in a rhythm. And once you're confident, you can just ride it and you don't really have to think a whole lot. You're just playing because you're feeling it every single night. The caveat that goes with that is the management. The problem with goalies playing more games is because the demand on the goalie with practices and stress levels are so high because teams don't let the goalie and the goalie coach do their thing. That's what we really do well in Winnipeg. We realize that our needs are separate from the whole team's needs, and they let us do what we need to do to make us best. I've got full control over the management side of things on that. We'll get more into. He's got more things to say on that. But there you go.
And Drew has read half the article to our audience.
It's not half the article. That's just one quote. I thought it'd be worthwhile to get it full context, along those lines. But I thought that was a very interesting comment from the Winnipeg Jets goaltender, sort of talking about his mindset and his thought process as it pertains to the workload that he faces on basically a year in, year out basis, and how the team sort of manages that maybe in a slightly different fashion than a lot of other teams, is what I can read between the lines there. So I will ask, as Dave goes away, I will ask Jessi your thoughts on what Connor Hellebuyck had to say in that quote to Dan Rosen of NHL.com.
I agree with you, Drew, that it's interesting comments there, but I think at this point in his career, I mean, we know that he likes to play a lot, and he's usually around 60 to 65 games, right? And so at his age and where he's at in his career, I don't see that changing much. Mm-hmm. And as you mentioned, you quoted him there, he would be okay with playing even more games, right? Yeah. So I don't think, I know we've had this conversation over the years, but I really don't think that his games played are going to be much different this year. In terms of his approach, I mean, Connor Hellebuyck doesn't surprise me at all. I mean, he's a very, very driven, focused individual, and what we hear all the time about Hellebuyck is how impressive the mental aspect of his game is, right? So none of that surprises me in that sense. But yeah, guys, I don't see him. I mean, maybe he plays a few less games, but I don't see him playing a drastically different amount of games this year as opposed to last year or a couple years ago, just because he likes to play a lot. And I think Hellebuyck and Comrie have a special arrangement. Like, I don't think anybody's expecting Comrie to play 40 games this year. That's not the situation. They have one of the best goalies, if not the best goalie in the league. So, what comes out of that quote is just a lot of confidence, and that shouldn't surprise us because Hellebuyck is definitely not short on confidence.
66, 64, 60, and 63 games over the last 4 years. It would have been similar back in 2020, 21 if it wasn't for COVID, of course. But, he seems to be consistently in that range, Dave. But he also doesn't seem, you would think a player maybe, as they get a little bit, as they move on in their career, not to say that Connor Hellebuyck is old by any stretch, but he's definitely getting a little bit older. You would think that maybe he'd have a bit of a different philosophy as it pertains to his workload, but that's certainly not the case based on those comments to Dan Rosen of NHL.com.
No, you are right in that regard, Drew. I think the interesting thing for me, though, is also, as I just saw the comment from Joel in the chat, I mean, it is an Olympic year, which means it's a condensed schedule, right? So it is going to be, and then obviously we know that Connor Hellebuyck is anticipating to play in the Olympics for Team USA. So, I mean, while it'll be condensed, he's still going to play some games, obviously, overseas. But the one thing that...
Well, and sorry, Dave, just to jump in here, he had 4 Nations last year, and we talked about this, right? Like we said, well, he's got the 4 Nations challenge. Maybe that means, he's going to play some less games. And he ended up playing 63 games, right? So, I mean, what are we talking about here? He's probably still going to be in the low 60s at the end of the day, right?
No, yeah, you're right. And the truth was, again, like I said, I think I predicted last year around this time that I thought he'd play in the 56 to 60 range. I thought that would be ideal for him, but little did I know he'd play 63, as he just pointed out. And I really do, again, think that one thing the Jets do really well here is use a third goalie. Former draft pick, of course, and Manitoban, Jason Kasdorf, who often steps in and plays net for Connor Hellebuyck in practice and gives him kind of time for his body to rest and recover. So, I mean, again, regardless of, the fact that most goaltenders who have won the Stanley Cup in the last X number of years, unless it's a platoon, have been playing in that 50 to 60 range. Connor Hellebuyck is somewhat of a unique animal in that regard. And as he also pointed out, he and Eric Comrie do seem to have a pretty good system worked out. So we'll see. We'll see if the philosophy changes at all to keep him perhaps just a little bit fresher for the postseason this year. But again, I'm not going to make any predictions because last year my not so bold prediction was very wrong.
So along the same lines, he continued in that with a quote. Where Dan Rosen said, "Okay, that's an interesting philosophy. You're talking about you work with the management and you have full control over your schedule." So here's what Connor Hellebuyck further had to say on that. "So with me and my goalie coach, the Jets goalie coach. We talk about things like after games, do you need some time off? Do we need to take the day off and then maybe do a big video session? Or maybe do we go in the gym and get a light workout in, some activation, or maybe just do video that day and call it a day? Do you need rest? Get your rest when you can get it. Do you want to go on the ice? Sometimes it's I want to go on the ice, but I don't need to see shots that day. I just want to go out with my goalie coach and do some skating and get dialed in and have a good work day without really exhausting the tank at all. Really sort of just goes to show you how relatively pointless practice is for goaltenders in particular. You know, practice is mostly for skaters. Goalies oftentimes are just there as targets and, fill up space. It really does go to show you that the majority of the practice time for a goaltender, or at least Connor Hellebuyck in this case, is done separate from the larger team in private video sessions and in circumstances that you don't necessarily see as guys are going through the real a real 45 minutes an hour long practice.
Right. We obviously know Hellebuyck and goalie coach Wade Flaherty are very close, and they're always tinkering his game, right? But I think it's interesting because I don't know if you necessarily get these types of comments from Hellebuyck at a different point in the season, right? Like I think he's very much looking, at the season, at the game, at a macro level. So it's kind of refreshing to hear him not just giving kind of cliche comments, right, Drew? I think that's the main reason why you're bringing this up, because it wasn't just kind of your normal fluffery, right, if you will. There
was some insight into his approach, right, which is interesting because you're right. During the season, when you just don't get that kind of opportunity. It's more boilerplate. It's more rote answers. It's more, okay, we can all sort of know the quotes as they're going to come before they even say them. Here, given that the season hasn't started yet, that this is a more of a casual environment, you can actually delve a little bit deeper into topics. Continuing on, I've had a couple... this is Dan Rosen's question. Have you had conversations about all of that with other goalies and your philosophies? Have you spoken to other goalies about what you think versus their approach? I've had a couple conversations, definitely, but it's not on the goalie to figure that out. It's on the organization to let him figure that out. That's why I'm so grateful where I play. I've been building it for years. The organization has realized that if you let me be hands-on, I'm going to make things work, and we have such a good goalie coach that delivers that message as well. So it's on the goalie coach and the coaches to deliver the message like, hey, we're not slacking off here. There's a purpose for everything we do. So from a larger macro perspective, like you said, Jessi, you can see how everything is working properly here, that there's no tension based on these comments, that Hellebuyck's approach might be different from the approach of other goalies or other organizations or other goalie coaches. Instead, they realize, he's an artist who might need to do things in a slightly different manner than what the textbook says. Let him do that. And the team seems to be embracing that philosophy and letting Connor Hellebuyck figure out, in conjunction, of course, with Wade Flaherty and the whole organization, let him figure out what he needs to be at his best. So I just thought it was really sort of interesting insight into the Jets' best player, the best goalie in the league, and how he approaches it during the course of the season.
Yeah, and obviously the approach is working, right, guys? Because he's got 2 Vezinas back-to-back, and he just won the Hart Trophy, right? So I think, listening to him talk about his approach and his relationship with the organization, I think is, this is all music to Jets fans' ears, right? And the reality is Hellebuyck is and will be, for at least, the duration of his contract, the most important player on the Jets, right? Like, we know that the Jets depend on his goaltending in a huge way. And he's a big reason why they had the lowest goals against average in the league last year, right? So, he's an intense guy. Like, we talk about Mark Scheifele being, a hockey nerd or a hockey scientist. Hellebuyck is right up there with Scheifele, right? Like, that Hellebuyck's not the type of guy that, once the season's over, he just stops thinking about goaltending, right? Like, he's a guy that's, constantly thinking about his craft. Not to say that he doesn't take some time off and, have some vacation time with his family, but I'm just saying that everybody knows that his intensity level is just as high as basically any other player in the league, right? So the Jets are going to need him again with the big season, and there's no reason to believe that he won't have a big season based on his career to date. And it goes back to what we said. Yes, he's 32 years old, and he's not getting younger, so maybe he plays a few games this year, but I expect a lot of the same. And obviously a big question mark, guys, I'm sure he's been asking himself and he's been dealing with over the offseason is how do I play better in the playoffs, right? Like it's obviously not even the preseason yet, but that's really the only knock on Hellebuyck to date has been that his play in the postseason has not been the same, right? Like we all saw, in the St. Louis series, especially because in the Dallas series, I think we'd all agree he was much better. But I'm sure that's something that, one of the biggest things he's been dealing with is, how do I make sure that I bounce back with another great regular season after a really disappointing, at least first round, Dave?
Well, it's an interesting along those lines, Dave. Here's what Connor Hellebuyck sort of had to say about his approach entering the postseason. This is an article that's on tsn.ca. I'm not entirely certain who wrote it, but I'll give credit. It's on tsn.ca. It's available through our website, illegalcurve.com, in the morning papers from a couple days ago. Let me see where it was. Hellebuyck, who did register 2 shutouts in the Dallas series, including in Game 5 with Winnipeg facing elimination, took a, quote, big look at his game heading into the postseason, including making some, quote, tweaks before pivoting back to the crease foundation he's built over the last decade. Quote from Hellebuyck, I didn't like the look of the game. I thought I was out of what makes me me. So that's interesting to me in that it sounds like, and I mean, I would love a little bit more of a fulsome quote there, but I have to live with what I have in front of me. It sounds like he maybe made some changes ahead of the St. Louis series, Dave, and then obviously that didn't go very well at times, and then went back to a more comfortable or a more an approach that he was more comfortable with for the Dallas series. What are you sort of reading into? What are you hearing when you listen to all these different Hellebuyck related quotes?
Yeah, I think that's kind of what he said to us at the end of season media availability, if I recall correctly, was that he felt that he had added some things or made some changes, which is kind of like, it's a little bit cuckoo to think, well, hey, I've just had a heart, we didn't know at the time, but heart-earning season, and I'm going to make a change. I'm going to throw something.
If it ain't broke, don't fix it.
I'm going to throw something new into the mix and see how that goes for me. So yeah, no, I mean, I agree with you, Drew. It is a bit confusing, especially given the fact that we saw him kind of get back to, but again, maybe he was in his mind thinking, I have had all this regular season success. Maybe I need to do something in order to amplify what I'm doing in the regular season. As everyone talks about, the playoffs are not the regular season, and I'm going to change my game to accommodate for that and try and account for that, I should say. So, I mean, that's what he did. And as he said, he didn't have a lot of success in that St. Louis series, was much better against the Dallas Stars. And one thing about Connor Hellebuyck, Drew, though, is that he is, vocal about his position, and it's not just within the Winnipeg Jets. It's in, whether it was like goalie interference boys that he would have a big kind of opinion on, or other things. We know this is. So I'm not terribly surprised, but again, like I said, I think he's a guy who is going to continue to do these sorts of. What?
No, go ahead. You were just freezing a little bit, but you're fine. Keep going.
Oh no, I was coming to my conclusion anyway. So maybe it was a sign from the internet to stop talking. But it was just, I think he's a guy who's not afraid of sharing his mind and sharing his opinion as to what is best for him in his position. Now, again, at the end of the day, it's not free reign. He has to work within the structure of the team, and they'll have to decide if this year there is a better approach in order for him to be, ready to go 100% when that first round series begins.
Yeah, I mean, and that's the reality of it for the Winnipeg Jets and for Connor Hellebuyck specifically, is that we know what he can do and has done in the regular season, and it hasn't translated, seamlessly to the playoffs. The Dallas series was a lot better, no question about that. You register a couple shutouts in that Dallas series, and I mean, Hellebuyck himself, said, I know there are a couple bad games in their goals against wise. He's talking about the playoffs as a whole. But if we take those out of the picture, I felt like I had a good playoffs. It's just those big losses are going to make everything else seem so much worse. And he's right. He's not wrong about that. I mean, when he was at his peak, he was great. He was the Connor Hellebuyck that we expect. The problem is he had valleys that we never saw during the regular season that were so outrageous and so surprising that it does cloud everything else that he did that was positive.
Yeah, I would agree with that, right? Because you're not just talking about the series against the Blues. I mean, against Colorado, guys, 2 years ago. I don't have his numbers off the top of my head, but he allowed a lot of goals in that series. Obviously, Nate McKinnon and Cale Makar had a lot to do with that, right? Along with Mikko Rantanen, and remember how good Nichushkin was in that series as well. So it's been a few years now. You can even go back to the Vegas series, the year Vegas won the Stanley Cup, right, guys?
Yeah.
I mean, he wasn't Hellebuckian in that series either, right? So, I mean, this is something that he knows about, right? Like the way I look at Hellebuyck is it's not like anybody has to tell him, that he has to be better in the playoffs, right? He knows he wants to be better. And I think it is a good sign that, he saved the best for last, so to speak, in that Dallas series, right? We mentioned the 2 shutouts. He was much better. I'd argue that he outplayed Jake Ottinger in that series. For all the talk about Jake Ottinger being the number 1 goalie, first off, Connor Hellebuyck will be the number 1 goalie at the Olympics. I don't care what anybody says. I'm sorry. I mean, maybe you guys, differ in opinion, but as far as I'm concerned, that's his job to lose right now on that topic. I know that was heating up a lot during last year's playoffs. I think it'll have a lot to do with how Hellebuyck and Ottinger are playing going into the Olympics, but I think he rebounded and he silenced a lot of his critics, Dave, with how he played in that Dallas series.
Yeah, no, I mean, I don't think there's any question. Look, at the end of the day, it's not just about Connor Hellebuyck, but as he said, he is the most important player on this team. So the Jets are going to have to decide what is the best philosophy for them, because
a little frozen action for Dave.
Another repeat of a playoff failure.
Yeah, well, that's the Jets need him to be.
I don't know. It seems like, and then you guys are telling me I'm frozen.
It bounces back and forth, Dave. It's not a smooth internet signal, whatever you're working on there. It's okay. We'll make do.
Dave, it's you. It's not us. Okay.
Exactly. For once, it's you. It's not us. Ezzy and I are the backbone of the show, which is a surprising change of events.
This internet is crystal clear here in St. James. Let me tell you, boys.
It must be that River Heights internet that's a little slacking for Dave on this Saturday morning. It's okay. I mean, I thought that these were all very interesting comments from Connor Hellebuyck over the course of the last few days in Vegas. As because this will probably be the last that we sort of hear of these unvarnished comments. He's definitely going to try and put last year to bed and move forward, because once the games start for real, and we're talking about they're going to start for real in less than a month's time, it's all about what have you done for me lately. I mean, the Vezina is great, the Hart is great, but they don't really matter anymore because that was last year, and the Jets need him to be at his absolute best. They need him to try and replicate those numbers as much as they possibly can. I know it's hard to imagine that he's going to replicate them, to a 2.00 goals against average and a .925 save percentage. But it's not like the Jets' MO has changed much from last year to this year. There's still going to be a very similar approach: defense first, responsibility in your own zone, and then everything else builds upon that. And of course, that all starts with Connor Hellebuyck, number 37 in the Winnipeg Jets net.
Another thing too here, and I want to bring Dave back in here, and hopefully he's going to be coming in crystal clear. Another thing too is I know this isn't the main driving force, but Hellebuyck has the opportunity, I believe, to be the first goalie to win 3 Vezinas in a row since Hasek. Somebody might want to fact check me on that, but I'm pretty sure Hasek.
There wouldn't be anybody else who's done it since Hasek. So
right,
yeah,
that's what I'm saying. Yeah. I mean, he has the ability to do something that very few goalies have done. Right, so I think that's another thing to throw in there. Right, like I know the playoffs is the big prize, guys. Like this Jets team has Stanley Cup aspirations, but for just Hellebuyck personally, I think winning a 3rd Vezina in a row has got to also be something that's going to be a big motivation for him.
Yeah, Brodeur won 4 in 5 years, but you're right that there was the year that Kiprusoff won in between there, but Hasek won 3 in a row from from 90, and Hasek also won 5 in 6 years, which tells you how amazing he was. But you're right, Ezzy, there is something to be said. If you need to find internal driving force, one of the things to do is like, hey, I'd like to put my name. You've already etched your name in the record book with your Vezina Hart, because that hasn't been done in so long, as we all know. So maybe, use that as motivation. Whatever it takes to motivate a professional athlete is not something you're ever going to say, oh, no, you don't need to use that as motivation. All these guys look for every slight imaginable. They look for every sort of opportunity to fuel themselves, Dave. And Ezzy's probably right that is something that Connor Hellebuyck could very well use as another motivating force in the course of a regular season, if naturally you'd expect a little bit of a downturn. It's just, regression to the mean is always, is a saying for a reason. But if you're looking for motivations to not do that, there would be something else that he could potentially use.
Yeah, I mean, I think so, but it's probably also the fact that he often doesn't get, mentioned as a top 5 goaltender of all time. I mean, there's a lot of things that, he
doesn't get mentioned as a top 5 active goalie with some of these polls that that
some of those Eastern bias polls. But I think what it comes down to,
they're still putting Henrik Lundqvist, Dave, as the top goalie in the league.
I think
best dressed goalie, maybe.
Yeah, that's true. But I think what it comes down to is I really don't think you have a player who needs additional motivation. I think, and ultimately, while personal accolades are fantastic, and he's already distinguished himself, I suspect, as a Hall of Fame goaltender, I think what you're looking at is a guy who is motivated, like Mark Scheifele, like so many others, to win something greater for the team collective. So ultimately, his focus now, I suspect, is going to be on getting this team to that Stanley Cup. But the point is, you have to do it through a good foundation, and that's that foundation built through 82 games. So they'll do what they need to do through 82, and then they're going to have to really just ramp things up when it comes to the playoffs.
And our focus is going to be on bringing in our good friend Mike McIntyre to continue the Winnipeg Jets conversation. So we'll go to break and we'll do that. Mikey Mac on the other side. It's the Illegal Curve Hockey Show, presented by our friends at Play Now. Saturday morning, Drew Mandel, Ezzy Ginsberg, Dave Manook, Sketchy Internet. Don't go anywhere.
We want to thank you for not betting with Play Now and choosing our illegal gambling site instead.
Because we couldn't afford things like this without your money.
So much of your money.
Now you might have questions like,
do our profits benefit your community?
No.
Or bet with Play Now, Manitoba's local legal and secure gambling site.
Dining, entertainment, parking, and convenience, all in one spot. City Place is located in the heart of downtown Winnipeg, attached to the Canada Life Center. Whether you're working, living, or out for a night in the downtown, make City Place your go-to destination before or after the fun finds you. Lunchtime, game time, anytime, visit City Place at 333 St. Mary Avenue, next to Canada Life Center. Holt Dental, the new official dentist of Illegal Curve, has a philosophy rooted in 2 unyielding principles: genuinely caring about patients and providing outstanding service. Being a patient of Holt Dental means more than just checkups and treatments. It's taking the time to listen and talk to each patient so they can achieve the best long-term health, functionality, and aesthetics for their teeth, mouth, and gums. Conveniently located at Grant Park Festival on Taylor Avenue, Holt Dental is dentistry of the highest quality in a comfortable and relaxed environment. For more information, visit holtdental.ca. Oh, and there's plenty of free parking at the front door, too. Celebrating its 40th year as Winnipeg's home for stand-up comedy, Rumors Restaurant and Comedy Club has recently been named Canada's top comedy club and a top 5 comedy club in North America. From birthday parties to date nights to fundraisers and everything in between, Rumors is your destination for the best and most affordable live entertainment Winnipeg has to offer. For more information on upcoming shows, Rumor's incredible promotions, and to purchase tickets, visit rumorscomedyclub.com.
At Boston Pizza, a fast lunch doesn't have to mean fast food. Now you can get a $15 lunch served in just 20 minutes, including your choice of a main, side, and drink. That's right, lunch for $15 at your local Boston Pizza.
Saturday morning, the Illegal Curve Hockey Show rolls on. Dave Minuk, Ezra Ginsburg. I'm your host, Drew Mandel. Looking for something to do tonight. Jared Freed is at Rumor's Comedy Club, Rumor's Restaurant and Comedy Club. I had the pleasure of checking him out last night. He was fantastic. Tickets available. A few tickets available, not many. rumorscomedyclub.com. We're pleased to welcome to the program our very good friend from the Winnipeg Free Press, fresh off of his Caribbean cruise and his time spent in New York City, our buddy Mike McIntyre. One last little vacation before getting into hockey season. Am I right?
Absolutely, yes. Good on the Jets for not doing anything newsworthy while I was away. I was a little worried we might get like a Kyle Connor or Adam Lowry contract extension. Of course, Ken Wiebe was here in town and would have held down the fort had that happened. But yeah, it was a great journey, adventure, holiday. Combined a lot of sporting activity. Got to see three ball games, a couple Blue Jay Yankee games, a Mets Marlins game. Got to golf at this beautiful course in Bermuda. We took a 5-day cruise to Bermuda. So yeah, got my sporting fill, even though I was on holidays, and now back rested, relaxed, and raring to go here.
Yeah, raring to go. It's all going to start this coming week with the kickoff of training camp. And then, of course, next weekend with Fan Fest. Aside from spending more quality time with Dave Minuk, Mike, what are you really sort of keeping an eye on and looking forward to most when the Jets start training camp a little bit later on?
Well, I think the biggest obvious storyline is going to be the Jonathan Toews watch, and just seeing, it's one thing to watch him in these informal skates, and Dave's been down there, and I suspect he would concur that Toews is moving pretty well. He's looking good out there. It's hard to get a real read though, in that environment. But once the training camp actually gets going officially, and of course once we get into some preseason games, I asked Jonathan Toews the other day how many games he wants to play out of the 6, and I think his answer was something along the lines of the more the better. So, might we see him in 4 of the 6? That would probably make some sense. And obviously just seeing, what he looks like, how he acquits himself to a game environment is going to be key, because it's such an obvious, huge storyline. And the more the Jets can get from a Jonathan Toews, I think the better off they'll be. And I know there are some skeptics out there who, don't think they're going to get really much of anything from him. So I think that's the biggest storyline to me. For the most part, I think we know the basics of this lineup. There's not a whole lot of drama. Sure, there's been a little bit of turnover. They've obviously lost a few players in free agency. They brought a few new guys in, but I don't think there's, any huge question marks outside of maybe some depth battle type positions. So yeah, the Toews watch for me is going to be front and center, and how quickly can he get acclimatized, and what does he look like when the puck drops for real in now less than a month.
Mike, you mentioned Adam Lowry and Kyle Connor earlier, and obviously we're expecting both of those guys to sign at some point. I wanted to ask you about Kyle Connor, obviously, because that's the bigger one. I mean, all due respect to Adam Lowry, I think we agree that one's going to be most likely shorter term and not as much money. Let's be honest here. What's your assessment of where we're at? Like, do you see a contract being signed during training camp? We talked about it last week. We've seen that in the past with players like Josh Morrissey, and if you want to go back to, I guess, 2018, 2019, or whenever that was, Blake Wheeler. Like, where do you think we're at right now? Because I think a lot of people, are hoping that Connor signs at some point during training camp. But what is your kind of take on where we're at right now?
Yeah, and don't forget Mark Scheifele, Connor Hellebuyck signed.
Yes, that's right.
Right at the end of training camp, right before the season. So there's certainly precedent. And just to be clear, Ezzy, are you suggesting that Adam Lowry is not going to get a Kirill Kaprizov type offer from the Jets?
Maybe he does. I mean, he is a great captain, right? So maybe they give him a little instead of a hometown discount, he gets the hometown bonus.
Well, he might get a $16 million offer from the Jets. The problem is it's not going to be for 1 year. It's going to be for like the totality. It's probably going to be like a 4-year or 3-year deal. But no, I mean, clearly there's a lot of focus on Kyle Connor, and I'm not surprised that a deal hasn't been done yet. I didn't expect anything to happen before Labor Day, for example. And Kyle Connor, I think he's getting in town today. This is traditionally what he does. Nobody should be reading anything into it that he wasn't here last week when most of the regulars were. He always stays back in Michigan and comes, closer to the start of camp. He's going to be here. And in fact, he's scheduled to speak with the media on Monday. The Jets are holding their annual golf tournament down at St. Charles. And it'll be interesting to obviously talk to Kyle Connor on Monday, presuming a deal isn't done between now and then, and just hear his thoughts. We obviously asked Adam Lowry the other day about it, and funny, he actually said, I'm not worried. And in fact, I think there's a bigger priority for Chevy right now, which is the allusion to Kyle Connor. So I do expect he's going to be re-signed. And I would be shocked if it doesn't happen before the start of the season. Does that mean it happens in the next 5 days before training camp begins? Not necessarily. As you mentioned, there are precedents in the past where these things have happened during camp or even at the end of it. But I don't think the Jets want this to become a distraction. I mean, there's obviously some variables at play here, and just joke about the Kaprizov situation, but that's a lot of money that he turned down, and it's interesting, the discussion about term. And I've often thought that maybe Kyle Connor is looking at a shorter term that would allow him to get one more big payday, 3 or 4 years from now. And something like that would not surprise me. It would almost line him up with so much of the other Jets core.
Yeah, talked about
so, is that part of the holdup here that, I'm sure if the Jets, they probably would like to make Kyle Connor a Jet for life. He may be opting with the rising salary cap to maybe go shorter term and then take one more run. So I do expect it'll get done. I don't think this is a Nikolai Ehlers 2.0 situation here where this is going to drag out all season long and become a major storyline and distraction. But obviously the closer we get to opening day and a deal isn't done, I think we'll start to hear even more buzz about it. That being said, I fully expect the deal gets done before they face the Dallas Stars on October 9th.
And Mike, I got to ask you about the defense, because it seems like, and it's hard to say, obviously, with training camp still not ready to start for another few days, but which means we'll be watching the battles and watching what happens. And obviously injuries could play a role in that, but something's got to give. At some point, something has to give. And how do you see this breaking for Ville Heinola or Logan Stanley or player X? How do you kind of see things for the guys who are in that mushy middle?
Yeah, you're right. And, when I said Jonathan Toews would be the main storyline, that's not to discount some other ones. And you just mentioned one of them. I mean, the blue line battle, the Jets, they didn't lose anybody over the summer from the back end. And by my count, Dave, correct me if I'm wrong, they got 9 guys on one-way deals. They're not keeping 9. I don't even know if they're keeping 8. Scott Arniel last year said the preference was to just have 7 defensemen on the roster, and obviously some circumstances dictated some changes as that played out, specifically not wanting to lose Ville on waivers. But, there's going to have to be some give here, barring an injury or two. Somebody's going on waivers if there's not a trade. And, this is where there's risk involved for sure. We've seen it in the past with the Jets. They've lost Johnny Kovacevic. They've lost Declan Chisholm. Are they about to lose another guy or two? to the waiver wire. And, so much of it is dependent on what's going on with the other 31 teams. Like, you can potentially slip a guy through waivers at the end of camp if every other team is content with what they have and they're healthy. Because don't forget, I mean, if they pick a guy up on waivers just as they were about to set their roster, now they have to potentially put someone on waivers unless they have a waiver exempt player. But that's where things like injuries, you could get a team that thinks they're in good shape on the blue line, but they suffer a couple injuries in the preseason. All of a sudden they're desperate and they're absolutely rubbing their hands with glee at the waiver wire. So there's risk for sure. One way to alleviate that risk would have been to make a trade or two and at least get something back, a late round draft pick, whatever. Obviously that hasn't happened. We don't know why. I mean, we can only assume that Kevin Cheveldayoff hasn't liked any of the offers he's heard for any of his surplus defenders. But yeah, I mean, how this plays out over the next 3 weeks or so is going to be fascinating. And, it seems very likely that unless something dramatically changes, the Jets, I think there's a very good chance they lose a player to the waiver wire, whether that's a Ville Heinola, a Logan Stanley, remains to be seen, but something does have to give. You're bang on, Dave.
Mike McIntyre of the Winnipeg Free Press, our guest. This is the Illegal Curve Hockey Show, brought to you by our friends at Play Now. Mike, circling back to Kyle Connor for a second. You mentioned that you don't expect it to play out in a manner similar to Nikolai Ehlers, and I would tend to agree along those lines. It seems like Ehlers was always destined to see what the market was going to offer to him. But if you're the Jets, and with so much uncertainty, I would say, in and around the NHL with the skyrocketing salary cap, and Kyle Connor maybe wanting to take his time to see what some of his other fellow pending UFAs decide to do, how do the Jets sort of weigh the risk reward of that as you get closer and closer and further throughout the season? I mean, they were prepared to let Ehlers walk.
Yeah.
Can you do the same with Kyle Connor? I mean, they're asking that question in Minnesota right now with Gabriel Kaprizov turning down that massive offer, allegedly. Just how do the Jets? That's a real, that's a tough needle to thread if you're the Jets. If you're the Jets brass,
it's a lot easier to thread if you're a middle of the pack team or a back of the pack team, but it's extremely difficult, as we saw last year, if you're leading the NHL in the regular season standings and you're a buyer, not a seller, and your window to win is wide open, because then what do? You're not trading one of your best players at the deadline to recoup some assets the way teams normally would in that situation. You're treating that player as your own self-rental, really. Mm-hmm. And that's obviously a risky bit of business. In the case of Ehlers, it didn't pay off because they weren't able to get him re-signed. They didn't trade him, prior to July 1 for some kind of draft pick, the way we've seen with other pending UFAs. Could the Jets afford to do that again? I don't know that they have much choice at this point, because I guess unless Kyle Connor flatly came back to them, in the next few weeks and said, absolutely not, like, I am going to test free agency. Mm-hmm. Nothing you can offer me, nothing you can say will change my mind. Then I guess you have some time to see if you could quickly turn that, what is going to be an asset that's going to walk, if you could turn that into something. I don't see a scenario where Kyle Connor says that. If he were to do that, though, absolutely, you'd have to explore trades, and the sooner the better. Because again, you start the season, now you're running the risk of an injury, for example, and a depreciating asset in that sense. So, yeah, it's in hindsight, obviously, it would have been great if Nikolai Ehlers could have been a little more clear with the Jets off the hop. Maybe they could have done something a little differently in that situation. I don't blame this market for being a little leery about the situation. They probably have some PTSD from the Ehlers. I just think these are apples and oranges when we look at them. But We'll see how it plays out, and maybe I'm proven wrong. And yeah, that would be a absolutely devastating blow to the Jets if for a second straight year they were to lose a core piece, a drafted and developed talent for nothing. A team, there's teams in the NHL that could get away with that. If you're Vegas, Tampa, whatever, Florida, no big deal. You just go sign some other superstars in the summer. If you're the Winnipeg Jets, you can't operate like that and be successful. That's just not in your DNA. So yeah, it's a really interesting situation. And in some ways, Drew, the Jets' backs are against the wall. They don't hold the power here, really. They don't.
Mike, how much do you think making Team Canada for the upcoming 2026 Winter Olympics is going to motivate Mark Scheifele? We obviously know that he was at the orientation camp in August. I don't think a lot of people were paying attention to it necessarily, even the hardcore hockey fans, because everybody was still on summer vacation. But obviously Scheifele didn't make the Four Nations face-off team. So how much do you think that's going to be motivating a guy who obviously wants to be there in Italy with, the Crosbys and the McKinnons?
A tremendous amount, Ezzy, and I think Mark Scheifele is going to have no shortage of motivators. Just the way last season ended, of course, and it was more than hockey, obviously, way more than hockey for Mark Scheifele. But that was a devastating and just emotionally, devastating way that his season ended. And I think that's something that's probably been eating away at him all summer. He's probably going to channel a lot of that into what goes on this season. I was talking to Eric Comrie at the Manitoba Open a few weeks ago, and he was telling me how Mark Scheifele is just absolutely on fire on the golf course this summer. He said like 5 or 6 rounds under par, and got me thinking, like, maybe that's just a product of Mark Scheifele. He's just fired up about everything, and that could prove to be really good for the Jets. But yeah, I think the fact he got invited to that Olympic orientation was a great step, and I fully expect Mark Scheifele will do everything in his power to prove to Team Canada brass that he should be there, along with Mike McIntyre in Italy. Since I hope
he's going to be on the ice.
Yeah, I won't be on the team, but I will be covering the team.
Mike, that must be rough, going to Bermuda, going to New York, Italy. I mean, I can fill in for you if you want. I have a journalism diploma.
You could be like
you don't have a passport, though.
You could be the George Costanza, like assistant to the traveling secretary.
I'll do whatever I need to do, Mike, to go with you.
Now, it's funny you ask about Scheifele and motivation. This seems really far-fetched, but what about Jonathan Toews and Olympic motivation? Dave, you were at the scrum the other day. I think it was Jim Bender of CP, and I kind of laughed initially at the question because honestly, it never even crossed my mind. Jim Bender asked him about, coming back in an Olympic year.
Yeah.
And Jonathan Toews actually answered that seriously. And that said, yeah, that's part of it. It's part of his motivation. Does Jonathan Toews really think that he could play his way onto? I mean, there was a time where Jonathan Toews would have been a lock, of course, for any. I mean, he's as decorated as they come, but he's also 37 and 2 years removed from even playing. Is Jonathan Toews thinking that he can put himself on the radar over the net? Wouldn't that be an incredible development? And you talk about a team that would benefit from that. I mean, the Jets would love to see that. I just don't know that that's on anyone's mind. Is it really?
It's on Jim Bender's mind,
and maybe Jonathan Toews' mind, given his answer. Yeah.
Well, he's already got 2 Olympic golds, right?
Yeah, I mean, maybe he wants the hat trick, right?
Yeah.
He's got some experience in a shootout. I think he could succeed in a shootout if necessary.
Yeah, he'll be the shootout master.
That's right.
Mike, one of the things that you asked Mark Morrison, the Moose head coach, who's taking the Jets prospects, or he's in Montreal with the Jets prospects. You talked about insulating those kids. And I thought it was interesting because that's one thing we've been focused on also is just, with the graduation of guys like Colby Barlow, Brayden Yager, Jacob Julian, and guys who are still relatively young, like Brad Lambert, Nikita Chibrikov.
Right.
Just how good do you think, especially you can see that the organization made a concerted effort to reverse what happened last year with the Manitoba Moose and ensure that there are a slew of good veterans to really help these guys show what it takes to become a pro?
Yeah, I look at the Moose roster, or the projected roster, because of course you got to wait and see how training camp for the Jets shakes out. But barring the Jets running into like a ton of injuries, and we know they'll have one, Adam Lowry is going to start the year injured. So presumably somebody's on the roster that wouldn't necessarily be there off the hop once Lowry's back. Do the Jets, I mean, maybe they never get to a point where every regular is healthy. We'll see how that plays out. But you look at what the Moose probably will have come their way, and I don't know, is a perfect season off the table, Dave? Like, what do they play, 76, 74, 76-0? Okay, maybe not that good, but no, they should be a lot better. And, you know, that was not a great environment. Dave, you cover the team a lot closer than I do, but for a variety of reasons, things did not go very well last year down on the farm. And, you know, you never want anybody to be in a situation like that, but especially young players that you're trying to develop and, you know, teach winning ways to. So, yeah, it was interesting to see, like, the Jets organization went out and actually spent a good chunk of money this year. Like, some of these guys on these AHL deals, the Jets are paying them, like, you know, guaranteed money that you don't normally see. You see it like with the Toronto Marlies. It was a bit of a surprise for the Jets, but I think it's a concerted effort, and it's all about development for sure and creating a good environment. So, yeah, I think the Moose, you know, and I guess that in some ways put some pressure on Mark Morrison. They obviously would like to see some better results from down on the farm. And interesting move too, Dave, that maybe hasn't been highly publicized, is the hiring of Bob Nardella, like a very veteran, proven coach at that level, to come in as an assistant. He's not your ordinary assistant coach, though, right? Given his resume and credentials. And I think that's also part of, you know, they don't just want to surround the players with more experience and talent. They obviously wanted to do that to the coaching staff as well.
Mike McIntyre, the Winnipeg Free Press, joining us this morning on the Illegal Curve Hockey Show. Mike, we know Nikolai Ehlers, he's gone. We've talked about that really ad nauseum. And that means that there's going to need to be players who step up and fill that role. 63 points for Ehlers walked out the door. Cole Perfetti is obviously the guy that everyone's got their eye on as taking another leap forward. By your estimation, what does that look like for Cole Perfetti this coming season?
Yeah, I mean, he obviously was able to check off a very important box last year, which was staying healthy. And, you know, that was something that was a big question mark about him. And, you know, I think he can build on that. And it was interesting, Adam Lowry, when he spoke the other day, you know, mentioned Cole Perfetti and his development, and was talking about guys that he thinks can hit another level this year. So certainly, I mean, Cole Perfetti has, in my view, every potential to be a consistent, you know, 25, maybe even 30 goal scorer in this league. Again, he's got to stay healthy. He's going to get the power play opportunities. And obviously with Ehlers gone, you know, he potentially moves up a slot or two here. You know, so he's a guy to watch for sure when you're talking about their own drafted and developed prospects. To me, Gustav Nyquist is a real wild card in all this, because if he can be some version of the Gustav Nyquist of 2 years ago, the Jets may have their Ehlers replacement in terms of just raw numbers. I mean, Gustav Nyquist just 2 years ago had a season that I think was 9 points more than Nikolai Ehlers has ever produced in a single season in his career. But then last year was a completely different story. And I had a great chat with Gustav earlier in the summer about what he thinks went wrong last year. And he believes he's way closer to the player of 2 years ago than he is the one from last year. So, you know, and if you're talking about trying to fill that lost production, he's a wild card here. And then, of course, so too is Jonathan Toews, because what constitutes a successful season? I mean, I think I predicted in a piece in the Free Press earlier this year that I could see Toews in the 15-goal, 45 to 50-point range, which I think would be perfectly acceptable. You know, if he could do that, And if you get something from Nyquist, if you get a little bit from a Tanner Pearson, and then if you get guys like Cole Perfetti taking another step, obviously they'd like to have another full season of Gabe Vilardi staying healthy. I think there's more than enough offense to fill the void that's been lost from Ehlers. I think, as always with this Jets team, it's going to come down to defense, goaltending, which we know have been elite the last 2 years. They've won the William Jennings Trophy 2 years in a row. And special teams, which, quite frankly, guys, the biggest difference last year over the year prior for the Jets was their improved special teams, specifically the power play. If they can remain in the upper tier, and that's where Nikolai Ehlers played such a big role, elevated that top unit, a zone entry wizard. The Jets are going to have to find a way to make that power play click without a Nikolai Ehlers. It's going to look a little different, but if they could do that, I think they'll be just fine.
You know, Mike, earlier we talked about the logjam on defense, and we also talked about the Adam Lowry injury. When it comes to the forward group, considering that Lowry is going to be out, and you were there, you spoke with him, it looks like he's still going to be out till the late October, early November. But the two players young players that obviously a lot of people are hoping are going to be able to step into the Jets lineup this year, Brad Lambert, Nikita Chibrikov. I mean, you've still got a lot of players there on kind of third, fourth line guys, right? Like when you bring in Tanner Pearson, you bring in Cole Koepke. I mean, David Gustafson is still a guy that's around. Jared Anderson Dolan is a guy that I keep mentioning that, he scored a goal in the playoffs. So he's a guy that, you might have penciled in for the Moose, but, he's a guy that, he wants a fourth line role with the Jets, right? Like I guess the question I want to ask you, Mike, is who do you think has a better shot at cracking the Jets roster this year, Lambert or Chibrikov?
Yeah, it's a great question, and it largely is going to depend, I think, on what the Jets are looking for, where the opening might be. Like if we're talking about a bottom six role, then I think Nikita Chibrikov is probably the answer, because I think he's a little more able to slide up or down the lineup than maybe Brad Lambert. The thing about Lambert that really interests me, guys, is if you look at the Jets roster right now compared to last season, one thing that really stands out is they're a lot slower. Mason Appleton wasn't the fastest player, but he could get around the ice. Rasmus Kapari is gone. He obviously he was one of the fastest skaters in the league, like just straight line skaters. Now he didn't play all 82 last year. Brandon Tanev certainly brought energy and speed to the lineup. And last but certainly not least, Nikolai Ehlers, the guy was known as Fly, and he did just that around the ice. Look what they've brought in: Jonathan Toews, Tanner Pearson, Gustav Nyquist. Those guys are not speed burners at all. And even you look at what the Jets have in their top six already: Gabe Vilardi, Cole Perfetti. They'll never be mistaken for speed demons. So, Scott Arniel talked a lot last year about wanting to play quicker as a team, and he felt they did. How are they going to achieve that this year? And that's where a guy like Brad Lambert really interests me, because if the Jets are looking for an injection of speed in their lineup, they've got it in a guy like Lambert. But he's got to do more than just skate fast, obviously. And, I just don't know where he maybe slots in right off the hop here. I think we're all expecting, when camp gets underway next week, we probably see a line of Toews, Perfetti, and Nyquist. That, to me, that's probably how it lines up off the hop here. Then I think you've probably got Vlad Nemestikov in the Lowry spot on that line. Nemestikov, Niederreiter, and what? Iafallo. Yeah. Does Morgan Barron move up there and play the wing, or is Barron holding down the fourth line center spot? But maybe Barron moves up on that line with Nemestikov and Niederreiter, and then
I really like Barron up the middle, Mike.
Pardon me?
I really like Barron up the middle.
Yeah, I do too, for sure. Yeah. And you talk about speed. There's a guy that does have some significant speed. So yeah, it'll be interesting to see what Scott Arniel wants to do. But yeah, and I realize I'm not giving a direct answer on who's going to play more here, but it's really going to depend on, like, if there's an injury in the bottom six and the Jets, then I think it's Chibrikov. If there's something in the top six, then I think it's Lambert. I could see one of those guys starting the season with the Jets on the roster because of the Lowry situation. And then, where they slot them in, remains to be seen. But yeah, it'll be obviously that, and we didn't even talk about Elias Salamonson, another kid. And I think there's good reason Dave talked earlier about the logjam on the blue line. And that's the biggest obstacle to Elias Salamonson making the team out of camp, is that there's 9 guys on one-way deals ahead of him. Mm-hmm. And, even if he's dynamic in the preseason, I just don't see how he leapfrogs. Are the Jets going to put another guy on waivers in addition to the ones they probably already have to make a spot for him? I'm sure he's hoping that he can create a situation like that. But yeah, I mean, they'll be focused on some of these kids in the preseason. I just don't know that as the season gets underway that there's a whole lot of job openings for them, at least immediately.
Well, opportunity knocks when you least suspect it. The LA Kings are finding that out. Corey Perry, they just announced, underwent successful knee surgery yesterday. He's out 6 to 8 weeks. He was injured in a pre-training camp skate yesterday. You saw that news, and there's the verdict on his injury. 6 to 8 weeks he's going to be out of the Kings lineup. So I had
no idea that Corey Perry signed with the Kings. I'll be honest with you guys.
Ken Holland. Holland special there, yeah.
There you go. Mike McIntyre, Winnipeg Free Press, training camp later this week. Thanks so much for joining us. Appreciate your time. And as always, appreciate your insight.
You bet, guys. Have a great week.
You too, Mike. Take care. There he goes.
Cheers,
Mike McIntyre, a good friend of our program, joining us this morning. When we come back, the schedule to start the season for the Winnipeg Jets. The first 2 games, they're not easy. After that, it gets a little bit softer. We'll talk about the opening month of the Jets schedule up next here on the Illegal Curve Hockey Show. Drew Mindell, Dave Minuk, Ezra Ginsburg. Don't go anywhere.
We want to thank you for not betting with Play Now and choosing our illegal gambling site instead.
Because we couldn't afford things like this without your money.
So much of your money.
Now you might have questions like,
Do our profits benefit your community?
No.
Or bet with Play Now, Manitoba's local legal and secure gambling site.
Dining, entertainment, parking, and convenience, all in one spot. City Place is located in the heart of downtown Winnipeg, attached to the Canada Life Center. Whether you're working, living, or out for a night in the downtown, make City Place your go-to destination before or after the fun finds you. Lunchtime, game time, anytime, visit City Place at 333 St. Mary Avenue, next to Canada Life Center. Holt Dental, the new official dentist of Illegal Curve, has a philosophy rooted in 2 unyielding principles: genuinely caring about patients and providing outstanding service. Being a patient of Holt Dental means more than just checkups and treatments. It's taking the time to listen and talk to each patient so they can achieve the best long-term health, functionality, and aesthetics for their teeth, mouth, and gums. Conveniently located at Grant Park Festival on Taylor Avenue, Holt Dental is dentistry of the highest quality in a comfortable and relaxed environment. For more information, visit holtdental.ca. Oh, and there's plenty of free parking at the front door, too. Celebrating its 40th year as Winnipeg's home for stand-up comedy, Rumors Restaurant and Comedy Club has recently been named Canada's top comedy club and a top 5 comedy club in North America. From birthday parties to date nights to fundraisers and everything in between, Rumors is your destination for the best and most affordable live entertainment Winnipeg has to offer. For more information on upcoming shows, Rumors' incredible promotions, and to purchase tickets, visit rumorscomedyclub.com.
At Boston Pizza, a fast lunch doesn't have to mean fast food. Now you can get a $15 lunch served in just 20 minutes, including your choice of a main, side, and drink. That's right, lunch for $15 at your local Boston Pizza.
big thanks to our buddy Mike McIntyre for joining us here on the Illegal Curve Hockey Show. This is hour number 2 of the program. If you missed any of hour number 1, you can always just go on to our YouTube page, rewatch the show. While you're there, you should smash the like button. Otherwise, Dave M's going to drive over to your house and he's going to smash you. And you don't want to get Dave all Hulk-like. That's a bad idea, folks. And of course, while you're also on the YouTube page, just subscribe, turn your notifications on, ring the bell, as we like to say. We're the only people who like to say that. No other YouTube show has ever used that terminology. It's exclusive to us here on Illegal Curve. That way, you'll get notified each and every time we go live with this fine broadcast. As a reminder, next Saturday, live on location, Hockey for All Center, prize giveaways, courtesy of our friends at Play Now. So be sure to come and find us where we're broadcasting live next Saturday. There'll be a little QR code. You'll have to scan that and enter some information. You'll win some great prizing, potentially from our friends at Play Now. And still to come, we have tickets to give away, not on this week's show, but you got to leave it locked to this show and our social media channels and all of our good things that you like to follow us on, because we have tickets to the Winnipeg Jets home opener to give away. That home opener coming up later on in October. The Jets are going to be facing off against the Dallas Stars on Thursday, I believe, and if I'm not mistaken, it is October the 9th. We have tickets to give away to that game. So make sure you're following us, subscribe to us, chasing us down in the streets, all those good, fun things that people like to do. And we'll try and get you entered into some great prize draws.
Dave, I thought Drew was going to say that we had tickets to give away to Corn coming up on September 25th at Canada Life Center. But no, Jets tickets. But maybe I'll still have to buy tickets if they're available.
Tickets to Corn or tickets to the game?
Corn.
Oh, are you going? Do you want to see Corn? Is that
I always like Corn. Yeah, I wouldn't say I'm a huge fan. But
Okay.
like when I was in high school, like first, second year university, yeah, I was dug Corn, Adidas, Got the Life, Freak on a Leash. You know what I'm talking about, Drew?
I don't, in fact. It was more, and once you said Corn, I was thought like they sell tickets to the Morden Corn and Apple Festival. I thought you could just go. I mean, I didn't realize that it was a ticketed event.
Drew,
But,
I'm more of a Corn niblet guy.
You're a niblet.
Yeah, I like niblets.
I might start calling you my little niblet. I mean, I think that might be a good nickname for you moving forward. Ezzy Niblet Ginsburg.
You can't be mad or sad saying the word niblet. Like, you just can't. Try it. Like, it's impossible.
That might be the most astute thing he's ever said in 17 years of doing this show. That it is a good word. Niblet is a good word. So there you go. If anyone would like to give Ezzy some corn niblets, then apparently he'll make a good home for them. Also on that Thursday, October 9th, we're going to be live on location, a special noon hour broadcast at City Place. That's where we're going to be for the Jets home opener. So lots of fun stuff coming up here on the Illegal Curve Hockey Show and the Illegal Curve YouTube channel. Excellent pun there. Kenny's water bottle saying corn is amazing. Maize being, of course, the word for corn. Another word for corn. Anyways, there you have it. I was mentioning the start of the Jets schedule. The first 2 games are against playoff teams. The Dallas Stars, we know they were a playoff team. They got to the Western Conference Finals. The LA Kings, they were a playoff team last year. You remember that they almost had the Edmonton Oilers on the ropes. They were, they had the Edmonton Oilers in a good spot and a good opportunity until an ill-fated challenge turned the tide of that series. So those first 2 games, both of which are on home ice, are challenging games. Let's say, 2 teams against 2 good teams for the Winnipeg Jets. After that, the remainder of the schedule for the month of October, 3, 6, 9 games of the next 9 games to start the year for the Jets. Only 1 against the playoff team from last year. That's against Minnesota on Tuesday, October 28th. We remember last season the historically great start that the Winnipeg Jets got off to, which really set them on the trajectory to being the President's Trophy winning Winnipeg Jets. Given the start of this schedule for the Winnipeg Jets, given the way the month of October looks like for the Winnipeg Jets, how essential is it that they get off to a similarly good start? Not necessarily 14-1, but something that really allows them to take advantage of what appears, at least on the schedule maker's paper at this point, to be a soft schedule to start.
Yeah, guys, it's completely unrealistic to expect the Jets to start 15-1 again. Like, could it happen? Yes, but it's highly unlikely that it's going to happen again. Maybe not with the schedule, as Drew pointed out. The first couple games, those are tough, and like I will throw in, guys, that even though out of, what did we say, 8 of those 9 games are against teams that didn't make the playoffs, Drew, something like that.
That's correct. Yes.
I would say like that Utah team, I'm expecting. I'm not going to necessarily go out and on a limb and say that the Mammoth are going to be a playoff team, but I'm just saying the Mammoth are, I think, of that group of teams that the Jets play, I would say that would probably be the most challenging one. I mean, Calgary's always going to be tough. You know, Seattle's a decent team, but look, we're not talking about very good teams here. So I think, you know, if you're able to go, you know, even 11-5, Dave, or 12-4, obviously we're using 16 games here, but you know, if you're able to win,
which is weird because they're only playing 11.
Right, exactly. But yeah, exactly. The season's going to be over after that 11th game. We don't need to play all of these hard teams, but yeah, you obviously want to get off to a good start, and they should. But I think it's ridiculous to think that, you know, the Jets are going to start off 15-1 again. I mean, it's the greatest start in NHL history. Again, I'm not saying that it wouldn't be nice, Dave, but I mean, you just can't count on that. But yeah, well, they'll take 14-2 or 13-3 for sure.
I think what it comes down to, though, is ultimately we see how important points in October are for your. That to me is what's so critical, especially given the fact that we know that Adam Lowry won't be available probably till, he said himself a couple days ago, November 1st. I think it's against Pittsburgh. So it is going to be absolutely critical. I mean, it's kind of unusual because it always feels like the Jets, when they go to that East Coast and play like the Devils or the Flyers or the Islanders, it's later in the season. But this year they've got that kind of right after the first 2 home games. They go.
I'm a little bit concerned that Dave knew that off the top of his head that the Jets play the Penguins on November 1st. Oh,
well, no, Jessi, the reason I knew that is because I wrote a story about Adam Lowry and his targeted date to return. If you would have read it on a little site called illegalcurve.com.
I did. I read every single word.
Well, there you go. Then you would have known that I wrote that.
He reads it. He doesn't really process it or register it.
I don't know what it means, but
he can read the words. He doesn't understand the words. So
that's why you have the pictures. The pictures help me.
Yeah. That is true. I should have used a picture of him versus Sidney Crosby lining up, which I have thanks to Colby Spencer, a crack photographer. But regardless, the fact is that without Adam Lowry and with new other guys stepping up, and one of the things that Mike mentioned with respect to Morgan Barron and his opportunity here at center was just it's just interesting. Is Lowry actually highlighted Barron when he was asked about guys who are going to step up. And he said, "Well, I'm not expecting guys to step up in my absence and fill my role, but for people who," and he, as Mike said, it was Cole Perfetti was mentioned by Lowry, but also Morgan Barron. And he said they saw it with Morgan Barron last year, and Morgan Barron, I think, knows that there is going to be, you know, a lot of chance, a lot put on his shoulders, you know, fresh with that 2-year contract, right, that he signed over the summer. So it's absolutely critical for this team to kind of get off to that start, especially without Lowry, without that center depth that they have, especially with Jonathan Toews, the great unknown, and what he's going to do. Talk about humble, though. You know, again, if you didn't hear it, you should really listen to the media availabilities. We posted them, of course, on our YouTube channel and on the website. But just a guy who's, as you know, probably the most decorated hockey player ever out of Manitoba, and he's talking about earning his stripes with this group. Like it's a very humble guy, a guy who's very appreciative of this opportunity. But you listen to what Lowry says, you listen to what Shen says, you listen to what all these guys talk about, and they're talking about the impact off the ice as much as it is going to be on the ice. So I think that, you know, we'll see what Jonathan Toews has in the there's so many unknowns, right? Training camp is going to be fascinating to watch. The preseason games, to be honest with you, are actually going to be interesting to watch too, boys, just because even though I know you're not Jets full lineup, you're still going to get a sense as to how these guys look against, you know, not necessarily other NHLers, because oftentimes, you know, you play your NHL team at home, you send your AHL-ish with some NHL guys onto the road. So I suspect the Jets will do whatever it takes to put Toews in that best position to have success early, feel good about his game, and then, you know, hopefully for him, ramp it up into the regular season. But yeah, Drew, I think so much more than last year, it is important to get off to that good start and have that good feeling, because as he said, you've got other teams that have improved in your division. You know, Minnesota, and we'll talk to Jesse Pearson about 15 minutes, but Minnesota was a team that, remember, they were neck and neck with the Jets for a vast period of time, and then they lost more players to injury than I think any other team in the NHL last year. I could be wrong, but I know that they were up there. So for me, you've got Minnesota could be right up there. You've got St. Louis to see, did they improve or not? Because obviously they went on that run and got into the playoffs. And then again, you've got a team like Utah. So it's not going to be easy.
Never mind Dallas and Colorado, who are always
but Dallas, I was going to say, I don't even mention them because we know what they're going to be. But the fact of the matter is that you've got these teams that were behind the Jets. Well, everybody was behind the Jets. They won the President's Trophy, but teams that could be challenging and more challenging as they continue.
Yeah,
it's for this team. I mean, that doesn't sound like rocket science to make that statement, of course.
Yeah, it's certainly a difficult division that the Winnipeg Jets play in, and I mean, part of the success of the Jets last year, as it was their, was how well they played in division. That they, when you can take care of business in your division against the teams you play most often, you're usually, Captain Obvious here, you're usually going to end up with a decent result, and that's what the Winnipeg Jets. One of the things they were very good at last year, but at the same time, I mean, the Jets, I know there is some uncertainty. You do have those, the question marks to start the year, the Adam Lowry injury, who's going to fill in for Ehlers. Some of these new pieces, how are they going to fit in with the existing team that is, familiar with one another? But at the same time, you can't sort of allow yourself, or you can't sort of let yourself have a bit of a slower start, I think, especially because of how, at least on paper, weak, and again, weak is relative, but weak your opponents are supposed to be. You're not going to be playing against teams that were playoff teams last year for the vast majority of the month of October. So you need to make hay there. You need to take advantage of that. You need to put yourself on that good foot so that you don't have to be chasing all year long. Chasing gets tiring. I mean, it's one thing if you're the Florida Panthers and you're, just sort of firmly in a playoff spot, but you're, happy to be third in your division. You don't really care if you get home ice advantage. You don't really care, if you finish atop your division. But you don't want to be, in those wild card spots or, a couple points out of a wild card spot, because how difficult it gets to make up that ground. And for a lot of teams, if you don't get off to that good start, it can get late early, in a season. We've seen that happen. The Jets don't want to be that team. They've been front runners, I would argue, for the last couple of years. They've been, Dave loves his horse racing analogies. The Jets have been very good at being out in front to start, and it's served them well. So I would imagine that would be a similar MO they will try and follow this year. And fortunately for them, the schedule sort of lines up to allow that.
Most definitely. And we've talked about it, since the season ended, how important it was to get to that 15-1 start, because it essentially meant the Jets were a playoff team after, a month and a half, right? Like, it was going to be very difficult for them to miss the playoffs after that start. So yeah. I think it's imperative. And like you said, Drew, every single year, all 32 teams in the NHL want to get off to a good start. But I think especially with all of the outside factors, or just all the factors, I don't know if outside factors is the right choice of words, but some injury, some uncertainty. I want to almost stop using the word uncertainty. I mean, change. There's been change in the Jets lineup when it comes to the forward group, especially. We've already talked about the defense is exactly the same as last year, but because of that, and I think, back to Dave's point, it's more so because of the division that they're in, right? Like, the Jets didn't get out of their division last year, right? Like, Dallas beat them. They didn't get to the conference final. Mm-hmm. And I think the division's going to be even better, right? Like, the only team, guys, that really is not in the conversation is Chicago. Every other team, to me, has a shot at making the playoffs, right? Like, 5 teams made it last year. We already talked about the Wild. And yeah, there is a lot of uncertainty with other teams. You look at Kirill Kaprizov and his contract situation, right? But I think because of the fact, I don't care what anybody says, the Central Division to me is the best division in the league. And you don't want to be in a position where, you start off, 5-5 or 4-6, just looking at a 10-game segment, or if you're looking at 15 games, right? Like, you don't want to get off to a, 8-7 start or a 7-8 start or something like that and already be kind of chasing too many teams in your division, right? You want to get off to a good start in the first, 4 to 6 weeks. So certainly, Drew, the schedule is going to allow that, because the Islanders stink. The Predators aren't very good, right? Like the Calgary Flames, they always play the Jets tough. Dustin Wolf is obviously a great goalie.
The Flames were a 96-point team last year.
Exactly.
They were basically a playoff team.
Right. They're not a pushover, but they're also not an elite team, right? So, then you've got Chicago at the end of the month, and as Dave mentioned, to start off November, you've got Pittsburgh, which I think is game 12, right? So, yeah, we haven't done a deep dive into the schedule, but the Jets have got to have one of the easiest schedules to start of any team in the league.
Well, I mean, you play against fewer playoff teams from last year, so that's certainly and no, not to say that those teams won't improve, and some of them absolutely will, but the Jets will still only look at that and say, look, this is an opportunity for us. We want to get off to a similar start to what we did last season. Moving away, from this topic briefly, Brayden Yager, I just find it's very interesting. This is the guy, of course, that the Jets acquired for Richter McGroarty, and again, a guy who's they speak highly of his hockey sense. Dave, you probably saw him a lot this week down at Hockey for All Center. They speak highly about his hockey sense. They speak highly about his two-way game. I just sort of think it's fascinating the guys he's been able to pick brains of. When you're a young player and you're getting your feet wet in this league, and you're getting your feet wet as a professional after being drafted, that he spent the last couple of off seasons or had the opportunity to pick the brains of both Sidney Crosby, Jonathan Toews, even Mark Scheifele to some extent, just how significant of an advantage that is going to be to allow him to sort of begin to process the game at that professional level a little bit easier, Dave.
No, I think it's a good point. It's one that he discussed when we spoke to him a couple of days ago, Drew, is that, as a kid, said his parents were hard on him, and because Kenny Weeb asked him about his commitment to playing a 200-foot game, and he basically said, my parents, they always kind of instilled in me, watch 87, watch 19. That's the way you want to play. You can cheat the game. You can get a lot of points. We know that some folks on this in this chat did that, right, boys? But the fact of the matter is that in order to play properly, to make it to that next level, to really, be an effective player, especially because he's not a huge player, is you've got to play with your brain. And so he really has focused on those two guys. And you're right, Drew. I mean, what an opportunity for him to have a relationship with Sidney Crosby and learn from him. And then also to be able to learn now from Jonathan Toews and to be able to, he actually said the motivating factor for him to try and make the Jets out of camp, which we know is most likely not happening. We'll let him have his training camp opportunity, right, Ezzy? But for him is to be able to play with guys like Jonathan Toews, Mark Scheifele, Adam Lowry, those guys, to learn from them on a daily basis, to be around them, to be able to, pick up what they're, the wisdom that they're going to impart to someone like him. So, yeah, there's no question about Brayden Yager, who, if you really are, have come out courtesy of our friends, Jamie Thomas. So Brayden Yager will be playing with Fabian Wagner and Nikita Chibrikov, boys, tonight in my time. I've got lines, Ezzy, because I know people are desperate to get the lineup for tonight's Prospect Showdown. But yeah, I do think it's going to be a heck of an opportunity for Brayden Yager to learn from guys like that and continue his development. And also, again, like I said, most likely with the Moose, be really insulated with some really good veterans there.
Well, I do think that's, to your point, that's exactly what you're saying. I think that's a huge advantage, Ezzy, just the way that he's going to, just to soak up from that experience, to see what those guys do, to see, the subtleties, and there's so many of the subtleties that the veterans have learned over the years. And even a guy like Toews is going to teach these subtleties, I think, to Mark Scheifele. So that I bet you Scheifele will be better in the face-off dot this year than he ever has in previous years, simply from learning and watching Jonathan Toews do his thing. Because Jonathan Toews, and I know that, we all know that, there's an element of the community who says face-offs are not as important as a lot of people make it out to be, and that's fine. Everyone's entitled to their opinion. We don't need to get upset about other people's opinions. But I just think that that's going to be the knowledge transfer from one generation, because let's be honest, Jonathan Toews is in a different generation from Mark Scheifele, and Mark Scheifele is in a different generation from Brayden Yager.
It's funny. Toews is only 5 years older than Scheifele. It's almost like boys like
hockey-wise, he's in a different generation.
I know. I'm just bugging you, Drew. Yeah, but it's almost at this point like Jonathan Toews should have a purple wizard hat on at all times. Like Dave, like the way we talk about him, he's like but it's true though. I mean, like Toews is going to be a Hall of Famer. We've talked about this. It's not a question of if he's going to be a Hall of Famer. Jonathan Toews is going to be a Hall of Famer. His resume is just bananas in terms of what he's accomplished in the NHL. So, I mean, he has so much knowledge to pass down. And yeah, guys like Brayden Yager and Colby Barlow and these types of guys are going to soak it up. And I'm really excited for the Moose season. I know, we don't have to get Dave even more excited than he already is, but I mean, you're going to have a lot of good young prospects with the Moose this year, and veterans, right? Guys like Phil DiGiuseppe, Cale Clegg on the back end, right, Dave? So, Brayden Yager is an interesting one. I don't think he necessarily plays a lot of games for the Jets this year, but I wouldn't be surprised if he plays a little bit because he's that skilled.
Well, one player that we think is going to still play games for the Minnesota Wild this year is Kirill Kaprizov. Whether or not he'll play those games next year for the Wild is up for debate. We'll bring in Jessi Pierce from NHL.com and the Bardown Beauties podcast to discuss that exact question. Jessi, before we get into the details of it, the sense, how apoplectic are the hockey fans in Minnesota and in St. Paul with regard to the turning down of the 8-year, $128 million contract offer that was reported earlier this week?
You know that like little meme where the dog's sitting and the house is burning around and it's like, it's fine. This is fine. No big deal. It's exactly what's happening in Minnesota right now. I mean, Minnesota sports fans in general, not just for the Wild, but Vikings, Timberwolves, everything. We feel like we can't have nice things ever. And it just feels like, yep, this makes sense. Of course, he's not going to re-sign. Of course, there's not going to be an extension here. Of course, we're going to lose the best player this franchise has ever had. It makes fans go a little crazy. The amount of people that have told me to just trade him is a little insane too. Like you're not hearing that in Edmonton. I don't think they're saying to trade Connor McDavid by any stretch. And they're in a very similar situation, right? They're MVP superstar, but granted superstar of the league, still not signing his extension. It's a little crazy. It's it's a little unhinged. My panic level is starting to rise a little bit too. I've been very firm in my belief that he would come back around, that Kirill is here. It's just going to take a little bit of time. It's going to be a little finessing, but ultimately he's going to come back. And the more reports that kind of start to surface, the more behind the scenes that I'm starting to get and peeks behind the curtain. I don't know. I genuinely do not know what that future holds for Kirill in the Minnesota Wild.
And Jessi, obviously Wild GM Bill Guerin was, as you know, he was downplaying the situation, which, I mean, what else is he going to do, right? I mean, he's not going to raise even more alarm bells, but like, where do you go from here, right? Like people saw this number, it made headlines around the hockey world, and you see like $16 million a year, but I mean, I guess can the Wild afford not to sign Kaprizov?
No, and I mean, owner Craig Leopold had said at the beginning of last year, right, that no team is going to pay more than we are willing to pay. And Bill Guerin doubled down on that. And that's always kind of been the sense from the franchise. And I think probably they were a little taken aback, like, oh, we just reset the market and you're saying no. And again, mind you, whatever Kirill makes, McDavid's going to top that too. So you have to consider what that looks like. I'm sure Kirill's camp wants to wait McDavid out a little bit and vice versa to see what that could look like. I'm still very... I feel like it was the term that's a bigger problem for Kirill's camp. I think 8 years is the number to me that strikes me as, I don't want that. I want to turn down 8 years. I don't know necessarily that it was the number. Now, of course, we haven't spoken to Kirill yet. We'll get that opportunity next week at training camp, which is still a long time to wait. A lot of things can happen in between. But I think from Bill Guerin's perspective, I'm sure he's like, well, shoot, like, what do we do here? Our fan base needs him locked up for 8 years. We need him locked up for 8 years. We're offering this money and you're still saying no. Because the biggest thing though, that Bill Guerin cannot allow to happen, and Minnesota sports fans have this PTSD of Marian Gaborik. Marian Gaborik walked into free agency, the first best player that this franchise has ever had. And Kirill has since exceeded Gaborik's performance. And they let Gaborik go for nothing. And that cannot happen at all. Now, there's a lot of extra layers to be added to Kirill, too. He's got the full no move. He's got the full no trade. So you have to approach him with that list. You don't want to trade away your best player, but you can't let him walk into free agency. Not to mention whatever assets you could get back. Kirill's looking as like a rental, right? Like for most teams, unless a team can get that agreement. So that's going to depend on the value. It's a hot mess. I think Bill Guerin's probably rightfully so, very, very stressed. He knows how important this is, not only to the franchise, but frankly for his career. I mean, right? Like, I think if you plop on this Kirill deal, it doesn't look great for Bill Guerin's job security either.
You know, Jessi, before the Kirill news came out, what was the sentiment amongst Wild fans? Because you guys had such a great season last year, and they were neck and neck with the Winnipeg Jets. I said this earlier on the show. I don't think a team had more injuries than the Minnesota Wild last year. So prior to this news about Kirill coming out and the uncertainty it's created, was there a lot of excitement in Minnesota based on what they did last year?
I mean, the biggest excitement came from you were removed from the shackles of the Zach Parise, Ryan Suter buyouts. So it was supposed to be July 1 was supposed to be Christmas morning. And I say supposed to be because, as we know, that didn't happen. Now, that was out of Bill Guerin's control, right? He wasn't able to sign anybody because there was nobody to sign. You had your boy Nikolai Ehlers was probably the biggest free agent left available after everybody else re-signed with their current teams. So part of me is a little, I understand the fan base. Everybody's a little disappointed because I think you were expecting, I'm sure Kirill also was expecting Bill Guerin to land some big fish, some supporting cast around him, finally get those names in there because finally you have money to spend. And then there's no fish left in the pond, frankly. And I think that's out of Bill Guerin's control. He didn't need to overspend on players that were kind of meh, right? He has more money to spend at trade deadline. So I think that kind of took the wind out of the sails of the fan base a little bit because there was this, we've been told for year after year after year, once these buyouts are done, we're going to be contenders. Once these buyouts are done, we're going to get the big names. Once these buyouts are done, Kirill's going to get extended. It's going to be great. Everything, finally you're going to get out of the first, you're not just going to get out of the first round of the playoffs. You're going to make the conference finals, right? Like you're going to do all of these things. And now I don't think it looks like that, right? I mean, there's still a lot of unknowns. You're returning a lot of the same team. You know what you have in Matt Boldy, who I think will take another step this year. Brock Faber will probably do the same. Joel Erikssonek, healthy. That's going to be huge. Jonas Brodin, still a question mark around him, whether he's going to be ready for the start of the season. But Jared Spurgeon's back. You've got Zeev Buium entering the fold. Danilia Yurov over from Russia entering the fold too. But still on paper, the roster looks similar to last year, which again, as you'd mentioned, Dave, fairly successful. I think it was their best first round exit in a very long time. And I say that not necessarily facetiously, but they played Vegas to a T. Like it just, some pucks went the other way. And I think that was their downfall. But I also wonder how much Kaprizov is looking at the lack of movement this offseason as far as like, can we do this? Is this a team that I want to lock into? Because again, Kirill wants to win, like most hockey players, but he wants to win. He wants to know this team is a contender in the next 2 years. He doesn't want to wait another 3 or 4 years. He doesn't want to wait another 5 years. He needs to make a conference run. He needs to make a cup run in the next 2. And I don't know if that is going to be it. I think Minnesota is going to be, again, a very similar, maybe a top 3 team, probably 4 in the middle. But again, that's in hope they stay healthy. Goalie is the other question mark that you have. Philip Gustafson, if he can repeat last year, fantastic. But that's not really been his MO in his career. There's a lot of inconsistency in Gustafson, and Velstead is untested. You don't have Marc-Andre Fleury to lean on this year. So a lot of question marks. I think, again, there's so much angst surrounding Kirill right now that the fan base is kind of waiting with bated breath before there's any excitement allowed.
Jesse Pierce, NHL.com, and the Beauties, the Bardown Beauties podcast, pardon me, Jesse. So if Kirill didn't take $16 million a year, didn't take 8 years, what's it going to take to get him under contract? Or in your estimation, has that ship sailed? Is there any, it doesn't seem like it's a number. Is it, 4 years and, is 4 years and 20 million going to do it? It's, I just don't know what it's, if the writing is clearly on the wall or if this is just sort of public posturing to some extent.
I think it's a little public posturing, and Kirill now has kind of the fan base flipping on him a little bit too, because Minnesota in particular, I don't know if it's like this in Winnipeg or elsewhere. Minnesota fans do not take kindly when you quote unquote don't want to be here. They're very quick to be like, fine, leave. We don't care. We don't want you anyway. We want you to love us. That's the passive aggressiveness of Minnesota people in general. But our fan base is very, very much like that. I couldn't tell you how many players that they've been like, we don't need you. It's fine. Whatever. You don't like us. We don't want you here. And which is a terrible approach when it comes to a superstar. So, Kirill Kaprizov is going to also have to probably navigate a little bit of that animosity because, again, you turn down a huge contract because it sounds insane to say 19 million. I know Elliot Friedman on his podcast had said 7 years, 20 million. Some teams might be willing to offer, which is staggering because again, then McDavid is going to make how much? 22, 23? Like it's, Kirill is again, an elite in the elite echelon, but he hasn't taken his team to the Cup finals. He has not taken this team to the conference finals. He has not gotten them out of the first round of the playoffs either. And yes, it's difficult to do that solely, but McDavid's managed to. I mean, yes, he has Leon Draisaitl, but still he's managed to do a lot of that heavy lifting. So to a point to knock Kirill down a peg, I think 18 million still sounds crazy, but I'm guessing that's going to be a sweet spot for him. 5 years, 18 million. I think term wise, he would probably appreciate more. I could see his camp also volleying for 4 years because it gives him a little bit. The other thing to consider about Kirill, he will be 29 years old when this contract kicks in. And he's coming off 2 seasons where injuries were very prominent in his career too. He still is phenomenal. And I'm not trying to, again, say you don't need him. You can replace him. You can't. But it's, it'll be, again, the negotiations are going to be interesting because from Billy's camp, you have those to work against. From Kirill's camp, you need him. You need me. Ultimately, you need me. You said you would pay me whatever I wanted. Now I'm going to throw that back in your face. I want 18 million. But again, I fear the two sides are just too far apart. I don't know. I really don't.
That's what I was going to ask, Jessi. If Minnesota gives him that offer, will he take it, or do you think that he's destined to look elsewhere? I mean, we've heard Philadelphia, the Michkov connection. I mean, I don't want to speculate on random cities here, but do you think that if if Minnesota gave him everything he asked for,
Winnipeg better stay away. You can't be doing that to them. Come on now, guys.
Sorry, I misspoke. But do you think that if Minnesota gave him everything he'd asked for, he'd take it, or do you think that he's got his heart set on exploring other opportunities?
I mean, the reason I could see it dragging on into the season further than anybody would want is so he can see what this team looks like, right? Like, I think he needs to get that glimpse under the hood. I think you did an okay job. It felt like convincing Kirill that this team was sound, right? Again, look at the start from last year before the injuries hit. Look at the way that they were still able to make it into the playoffs and have a really good playoff with Kirill back in the fold. I just wonder the lack of offseason movement. I think he's kind of like, a lot of these players on this roster, re-signing Marcus Johansson, you still have Marcus Foligno. I mean, players that are good and valuable, but not necessarily the superstars that he probably wants, the superstars that Chicago's eventually going to have here and that New York's going to have. And, some of those names that have money to spend and also could use the talent that they have to lure Kirill. It's concerning. It is. I think it'll drag out for that reason alone. Kirill is going to want to see if this team is going to be a winner. Again, I'm still very convinced that that's the biggest part. It's not necessarily just the money speaking. Is this team going to win? So you have to show him that in the first month. You have to be a hot team. You have to be one of the best. You have to have great goaltending. Zebullium has to be everything that you're hoping and expecting him to be. Hopefully Tarasenko finds a little bit of magic like Matt Zuccarello did, frankly. I think we've squeezed a lot out of Zuki. And Marco Rossi has to get off to another good year. And then maybe Kirill says, okay, I'm willing to bet on this team again. I'm willing to play out some of my career because it's going to be a huge chunk of his career spent here. He doesn't want to risk that for a team that's not going to get out of the first round or make an actual run.
Jessi, just getting away from Kirill the Thrill for a second. One player I don't think we've talked about yet is Marco Rossi. And I'm not sure if you were aware, but there was a significant segment of Jets fans that became a little bit obsessed with Marco Rossi. And I don't know if it's because he was drafted right before Cole Perfetti back in 2020. Rossi goes 9th, Perfetti goes 10th. So I don't know if it's because Rossi could have been drafted by the Winnipeg Jets, but there were a lot of people that were looking at Rossi and saying, okay, yeah, that's who we need on the second line. That's going to be our savior. But I guess, are you surprised that there was that much chatter around the NHL about his uncertainty? Because he ended up signing for those who don't know, he ended up signing a 3-year, $15 million deal, but there was a lot of talk of an offer sheet or possibly a trade. But I guess what was your kind of overall take on the contract and all of the speculation around it?
It certainly kept our eyes off Kaprizov for the past couple months, right? There was enough drama surrounding Marco Rossi. No, I mean, Marco is a hard-nosed, great player, right? I mean, he's smaller size. He plays bigger than his body is up the middle, and Minnesota has lacked depth up the middle for a long, long time. The big question around Marco was his demotion. Bill Guerin will swear up and down that moving him down to the fourth line in the playoffs wasn't a demotion. It was just to get a different look. It was a demotion. You don't move a kid down to the fourth line, but put him between Yakov Trenin and I don't even remember who the other guy was on his other wing. Like, it doesn't matter. It was that kind of poor. And Marco was upset about that at the end of the season interviews and at the exit interviews, knowing that he was entering as an RFA. And Bill Guerin was going to be steadfast. He said, this is the price point that we see Marco Rossi at. And I think other teams probably recognize that. They're like, Bill Guerin doesn't want this guy. Bill Guerin's not very happy with this guy. We could get in and lowball him because Billy doesn't want him. So I think that was most of the conversation, right? I think that's why there was so much uncertainty. That's why there was so much talk, because also warranted. Marco Rossi had a great year. Again, 60 points. I mean, he played incredible, and that's a huge jump up from the 40 he had. And at only 23 years old, you have to believe there's more in the tank for a longer time as well. So it's very curious as to why. And again, Billy will tell us, no, we like Marco. I don't know why everybody keeps saying we don't. It's like, because the way they utilize him and the positions that they put him in suggests that maybe you're not that impressed with him, that you would rather move him. So I'm not surprised. I am surprised that Billy ended up, quote unquote, winning the war, right? Because it ended up signing for exactly what Marco had turned down time after time after time. And I think it's going to give him a little bit more of an edge again. Rossi's going to come in with that chip on his shoulder and prove him wrong. He's going to be a top six centerman, which again, the Wild need. I don't know why you would move a 60-point player that's
what I always thought, Jessi. Like,
yeah,
I realized that, Jets, I didn't think it was ridiculous that Jets fans wanted him, but I just didn't think that he was going anywhere. Like, coming off of a career year, like you said, he's young at 23 years old, and he's probably going to have many more, career seasons coming up. I just didn't think it was realistic that the Wild would give up on him.
Exactly. It is. It's a weird vibe around that because it doesn't make sense, right? But Bill Guerin, I think, has a set player that he likes. If you notice the guys that he goes out and signs, he likes the veteran guys. He likes the big bodies. He loves his big bodied guys. And Marco is kind of the opposite of that, right? I mean, you've seen kind of the way this team has operated the past few seasons. The younger guys don't necessarily get the opportunities that some of these veteran players do, which can work out. And sometimes it does, I can understand that, but there are times when those roles are given to older guys or bigger guys when maybe they shouldn't be. And I think Marco kind of is a part of that. He's a testament to that because Rossi has done everything this organization has always asked of him. He stayed, after his COVID health issues, he stayed in Minnesota, trained, did everything right, looked great coming out of camp, and again, had a 40-point year, which isn't bad for 22 years old, and then improved on that last season. And it's going to be curious as to how he's deployed. Hopefully he is in that top six. It wouldn't surprise me if they moved him around and bumped him down, just because I think it's a size thing. I hate to be a sizist, if you will, but I think that's the biggest, that's the only knock I see on him, because otherwise I don't see any. And again, he plays bigger than he is, which is fine. And he manages to stay healthy. He still manages to put his body in a protective space, which is great. I'm glad it's over. We don't have to talk about that, and we get to move on to Kirill, but it'll be very curious. And I think Marco will be better for it because, again, he is a guy that is motivated by being not undermined, but by being underestimated. And I think that's going to bode well for him this season.
Jessi, if they redid the 2019 NHL draft, I suspect Matt Boldy is not going to go in the 12th overall spot to the Minnesota Wild. I think he's got the second most points from that draft year. He had a career year last year. A consistent, 30-goal threat for the Minnesota Wild. What kind of I know you mentioned him earlier, but what do you see from him in terms of a ceiling for this year and just moving forward?
I say 85 points or plus. I mean, at some point he's going to be a 50-50 player. I do believe that. I think he's just got to find a little bit of consistency. That's the biggest thing. And that's hard to do, right? Especially last year when there were so many injuries and he's playing on different lines and he's trying to find different roles, because in 2 straight years now, Boldy has had a very noticeable slump, and it's very hard for him to sometimes get out of that, which again happens, and he's still young. But I think if he can maintain a more consistent season this year, which again comes with having a healthy squad around you, it's going to be tremendous. The sky's the limit. And I mean, you're looking at the deal he signed a few years back, 7x7, what a steal now. Like, you got this kid locked up for that. I mean, it's incredible. And he definitely is your top tier talent behind Kirill Kaprizov. And I think he knows that. I think last year I saw him on and off the ice really mature as a player, as a person. And I think that speaks volumes. And I can only imagine he's going to come into camp this year even more mature than last year. And again, probably more confident, more comfortable. So hopefully with that comes that consistency. But I mean, I'd be disappointed if he gets less than 85 points this year, because I think that's how good of a player he is.
That's an impressive bar to have to reach. One last question for you, Jessi. Ziv Buim, of course, sky's the limit for him. Rookie defenseman, University of Denver. Looks like he fits seamlessly on the left side of that Wild defense. What's fair to expect from him as he sort of begins his NHL journey?
Yeah, I mean, that's the toughest thing about Ziv is the expectations are already so high because all he does is win. Everywhere he goes, he wins gold medals. He wins national championships, right? And he has that poise about him coming in that similar to Brock Faber, where he has a confidence and a comfortability with him. His goal heading into the season was to gain 10 to 15 pounds because he is a little bit on the slimmer side. He managed to do that, so that's good. I watched him in the Prospects camp or game last night against St. Louis. And his mobility is incredible. The way that he's able to move the puck, and he has that offensive prowess as a defenseman too. And he's, obviously a very good two-way player too, but I love the offensive output that he can add because that's something Minnesota has desperately needed on the back end. I think there has to be a little bit of patience. I'm curious to see who he's paired with. I'm kind of hoping for a Jared Spurgeon pairing because I love the veteran experience with his youthfulness. Spurge will be very easy to cover up some of the mistakes that Buim is bound to make. I mean, I don't think he played poorly necessarily in his playoff debut. It was a lot to ask of a kid to come in and play in Vegas of all things to make your NHL debut in the playoffs. But I mean, he just has to get adjusted to the NHL style, the NHL speed. Again, bigger bodies out there. But I expect him to do well. I hate comparing him to Brock Faber because I think Brock Faber was so incredible what he was able to accomplish in his rookie season. But I kind of put him very, very close to that even, right? I think he's going to be in that conversation. I think Corey Pronman redid the draft and he had Ziv Buim going number 2, right? So I don't think that's crazy, but I worry about putting that much pressure on this kid who just, I haven't seen enough of him against older players to really know, but I think he'll be just fine regardless. He's probably your second pairing for the Wild. I'm excited to get him fully into the fold this year.
In a week that started with a JJ, that being McCarthy, it ended with a KK, that being Kaprizov, and Wild fans hope that Bill Guerin doesn't take an LL for losing Kirill Kaprizov. Jessi Pierce, NHL.com, Bardown Beauties podcast. Thanks so much for your insight. Thanks so much for your time this morning on the Illegal Curve Hockey Show.
Always. Thanks, boys. Have a good season.
You too.
Thanks, Jessi.
Take care, Jessi. Be well. Great interview, great insight. Jessi's a must follow when it comes to the Winnipeg Jets rival, Central Division rival, the Minnesota Wild. We have one commercial break left to take. We'll take it now. We'll come back. We'll wrap the show. We'll preview next week. Much more to come. Saturday morning, it's the Illegal Curve Hockey Show. Drew Mandel, Dave Minuk, Ezra Ginsburg, all our friends, all our rowdy friends.
We want to thank you for not betting with Play Now and choosing our illegal gambling site instead.
Because we couldn't afford things like this without your money.
So much of your money.
Now you might have questions like,
Do our profits benefit your community?
No.
Or bet with Play Now, Manitoba's local legal and secure gambling site.
Dining, entertainment, parking, and convenience, all in one spot. City Place is located in the heart of downtown Winnipeg, attached to the Canada Life Center. Whether you're working, living, or out for a night in the downtown, make City Place your go-to destination before or after the fun finds you. Lunchtime, game time, anytime, visit City Place at 333 St. Mary Avenue, next to Canada Life Center. Holt Dental, the new official dentist of Illegal Curve, has a philosophy rooted in 2 unyielding principles: genuinely caring about patients and providing outstanding service. Being a patient of Holt Dental means more than just checkups and treatments. It's taking the time to listen and talk to each patient so they can achieve the best long-term health, functionality, and aesthetics for their teeth, mouth, and gums. Conveniently located at Grant Park Festival on Taylor Avenue, Holt Dental is dentistry of the highest quality in a comfortable and relaxed environment. For more information, visit holtdental.ca. Oh, and there's plenty of free parking at the front door, too. Celebrating its 40th year as Winnipeg's home for stand-up comedy, Rumors Restaurant and Comedy Club has recently been named Canada's top comedy club and a top 5 comedy club in North America. From birthday parties to date nights to fundraisers and everything in between, Rumors is your destination for the best and most affordable live entertainment Winnipeg has to offer. For more information on upcoming shows, Rumors' incredible promotions, and to purchase tickets, visit rumorscomedyclub.com.
At Boston Pizza, a fast lunch doesn't have to mean fast food. Now you can get a $15 lunch served in just 20 minutes, including your choice of a main, side, and drink. That's right, lunch for $15 at your local Boston Pizza.
Welcome back to the Illegal Curve Hockey Show. Drew Mandel, Dave Minuk, Ezra Ginsburg. Big thanks to Jessi Pierce. Big thanks to Mike McIntyre before her, who joined us on this program to discuss the various goings-on with the Winnipeg Jets, and in Jessi's case, the Minnesota Wild. It's a lot of money to turn down if you're Kirill Kaprizov. The writing is the writing on the wall is not good for the Minnesota Wild in that case. I mean, stranger things have happened, and plans can change. But boy, is that a big contract to turn down. It's hard to be confident that he's still going to be a member of the Minnesota Wild, next season at the very least. Who knows about this year?
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense, as Jessi said, for Kaprizov to sign a shorter term deal, right? Because I just don't see how you can go much higher than that, guys. Like Kaprizov he's a guy who he's had over 100-point season. Last year, he missed half the season. But, I mean, Kaprizov has established himself, I think, as at the very least, a top 10 offensive player, even higher than that, right? So,
I'd say when he's healthy, he's a Hart Trophy candidate year in and year out.
Yeah, he's not going to win it, but he's going to be
Hart Trophy.
He's going to be a Hart Trophy candidate, that's for sure. I mean, obviously, Drew, I'm joking, but it's just it's tough with McKinnon and Draisaitl and McDavid and
but I don't think you're wrong in putting him in. He's in with them when he's healthy.
Right, and that's why like we were joking about $17-18 million. I mean, I just think that's a little ridiculous, but maybe he does get it. But I just think that based on what Jessi said and based on him turning down that contract, I would expect, or I wouldn't be surprised if it's let's say a 4 or 5 year deal.
Well, look, if he signs for 4 or 5 years, the Minnesota Wild and their fan base will be thrilled.
Absolutely.
They'll take whatever they can get out of him.
Exactly. They just don't want to lose him.
They just don't want to lose him. You can't lose superstars.
No.
I mean, he's a superstar. I know that he's
same
injured.
with the Jets and Kyle Connor. I obviously this is not apples and apples, guys, but I think, you're talking about a lot of money. I mean, I don't think Kyle Connor is going to get $15 million a year, but he's probably going to get around 11.
You figure out the money later. You get the contract done, and then you figure out the money later. Because you're not going to go get a guy like this. You're not just going to go pluck a guy and better get him into your lineup, and you can't really sign 2 or 3 guys that are going to resemble this.
Drew, it's like they say, superstars don't grow on trees. I mean, I have apples in my backyard, but I don't have superstar NHL players.
By the way, speaking of apples in his backyard, the amount of conversation that created, I got emails even like 2 days ago. I got an email from a listener telling me about a place that you can go get your apples converted into cider. So,
the funniest thing is, though, Dave, it's like people email you and Drew about my apple tree. Like they don't email. How come they're?
Well, they don't think you know how to use email, Ezzy. I'll be honest with you. They're always worried about that.
Yeah.
That makes sense. That makes a lot of sense. I wouldn't expect that they wouldn't. They figure that Dave has power of attorney over you and your apples, so that they just want to keep track of things and make sure Dave's aware so that he can pass it along and help you with your struggle.
Dave has homestead rights.
Has homestead rights. Power of attorney, whatever else it might be. To make sure that you're well taken care of. I got to tell you guys, I'm a little disappointed in both of you that neither of you liked my from JJ to KK to LL.
I laughed.
Did you laugh? I didn't hear a
laugh.
laugh.
I was probably on mute because I tend to mute when I'm not speaking. But yes, Drew, I gave you a high course, huh?
Okay, as long as you gave me a high course, huh? That's what I was.
I'm not going to interrupt. I see, Drew. I try not to interrupt the flow, so I was letting you go. But I'm sorry I didn't audibly unmute myself to laugh and give you that sort of validation you were looking for.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Apparently, JJ McCarthy welcomed a baby to the world recently.
He did yesterday. Him and his fiance, I believe they welcomed a baby boy, if I'm not mistaken. Rome, I believe, is the baby's name, if the social media posts were accurate.
So is that kid then going to just say, when in me?
I guess so.
Like when in Rome, get it?
Yes, we understood.
We understood the joke. It wasn't bad. We understood it. Didn't need to be explained, but
I thought it was pretty good, Dave.
It wasn't bad. It was not
good.
bad.
I knew where you were going with it, so I mean, it was a little. I anticipated. I'm not gonna lie. Yeah,
it was a little pedantic.
Yeah. Speaking of just quick notes with respect to not pedantic. Well, it's a little pedantic, but how kind of neat is it that Marc-Andre Fleury signed that contract to play with Minnesota with
Very
Pittsburgh?
Cool.
So even though he's retired, he's going to retire officially with the Pittsburgh Penguins, which, as our friend Seth Rorabaugh advised on Twitter, is what they did with Tom Barrasso. The only difference is that Fleury is actually, but the only difference is that Fleury is actually going to play in a preseason game, so he will get a chance to kind of end his career in Pittsburgh. So a lot of fun. And at least guaranteeing that preseason game will be sold out in Pittsburgh.
Exactly. There'll be a few people. Also, Marc-Andre Fleury, beloved around the NHL by everybody associated with the league. And if I recall correctly, and if I'm mistaken, I do apologize to the Barrasso family. But I believe Tom Barrasso was regarded as one of the bigger jerks in and around the NHL for a lot of his playing time. So a slight difference there altogether. But yeah, I saw that, and it's kind of fun. That's what we should be using exhibition games for. That just goes to show you how relatively pointless they are. We should just be using it for just random people off from the stands, random people off the street. They get to come and get saluted by the crowd every now and then. Although I got to give a shout out and credit to Montreal. The fact that they sold out the Bell Center for that Prospects game that the Jets are playing in tonight, that'll be pretty cool as well. That's
when we talked to Brayden Yager, one of the biggest things he talked about was how eye-opening that experience is going to be because you're going from whether you're playing junior, I mean, not to say that these guys haven't played in big environments. Obviously, they played for the World Juniors, so that's obviously a significant one. But 20,000 fans in Montreal is going to be pretty nuts.
It'll be pretty fun. You'll have coverage, I'm sure, of that on the website.
I don't know that I might have a few clips here and there. I'm not so sure. I don't think I'll be watching too aggressively.
I didn't define coverage. I just said coverage. It could be of any variety whatsoever.
Fair.
We remind everybody next Saturday we'll be live at Hockey for All Center, the Winnipeg Jets Fan Fest. We'll be there live on air. Come by, say hi, win prizes, everything. We're getting the show out of our respective studios, live and in person. We're looking forward to that.
Hopefully have better internet than I have today,
I was going to say, it doesn't take much to have worse internet than you, but you persevered nonetheless.
I did. By the way, big shout out. Hold on, Drew. Sorry to I don't know who it was. Someone is at Hockey for All Center and advised that Kyle Connor and Gustav Nyquist, who were the two guys that were missing, were skating as part of the group today.
There you go. We got updates coming from people live at Hockey for All Center.
Yeah.
You know where to keep it locked. It's the Illegal Curve YouTube channel and illegalcurve.com. Big thanks to Mike McIntyre. Big thanks to Jessi Pierce. Big thanks to all of our sponsors. Play Now, they're the title sponsor. Rumors Restaurant and Comedy Club. Holt Dental, City Place, Wheatland Hockey, and our friends, of course, at Boston Pizza. Thanks to everyone for joining us. If you haven't already done so, smash the like button, subscribe to the channel, turn your notifications on, ring the bell. We'll see you live and in person next Saturday morning. For Dave Minuk, for Ezra Ginsburg, I am your host, Drew Mandel. This has been the Illegal Curve Hockey Show.